No preparation, just organic flow. That works for me too.
Sweet.
Okay, so obviously I know you a little bit, but you don't know me very well at all. So I thought I'd just spend 30 seconds just sharing a little into me so you get a little background. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's great.
Amazing. Thank you. So for the last 10 years, I've been a yoga teacher, teaching predominantly in London, but also internationally. I have also trained and practiced as a massage therapist, so I'm used to holding space and connecting with people. Before that, I was working in finance in the City of London. And before that, I did a maths degree, so I'm quite analytically minded. And the last 5 years, I've been studying non-dual Shiva Tantra and therapeutic practices, and have merged all of that together to create Mind Yoga, where I work with people, predominantly women individually, to massage out mental emotional knots that are inhibiting them from surrendering fully into love, life, and success. And thank you. And in addition to that, I work with my partner through Sex.Prayers, doing couples development as relationship consultants, where we kind of audit a relationship to see where the blind spots are so that they can be addressed in a healthy way and create a healthy, successful relationship.
Love it.
Thank you. And again, I'm very grateful for your time. And I've been so fortunate in the conversations I've had already with very open, honest, and trusting women who have shared very freely and very courageously around this topic of trust and safety, predominantly with men. And obviously, I have no idea what it is that you're going to share. I'm excited to find out. And obviously, around this topic, things can come up. And I just want to express my intention for this space. I'm not here to therapize or to resolve anything, simply to be curious and hear your experience and create a safe space for you to feel open to sharing anything that comes up for you. Is that okay
Yeah.
with you?
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Um, so, my first question to you, Leola, is what inspired you to join me in this conversation here today?
I was inspired to join you in this conversation today because I felt the potential impact of the conversation in, I'm not sure who your audience is, but just opening that dialogue around creating more grace and compassion between sexes and
Mm,
potentially unpacking some pieces to give both sides some tools to support them and supporting each other.
amazing. Creating a bridge. And nice. I like that. Thank you. So please correct me if I'm mistaken, but I believe you are in partnership. You're married?
I am married, yes.
Congratulations to you. How long has that been?
We've been married for a little over a year. We've been together
Oh,
for a little over 2 years.
amazing.
Yeah,
You look very happy.
I am. I am very happy. I mean, it's been a journey to get here. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's been challenging at times, but I feel the happiest I've ever been. I feel more at peace than I've ever been, and I'm
Hmm.
grateful for that.
Hmm. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. May I ask a question following on from that?
Sure.
I don't want to presume, but I'm going to infer that you likely feel safe with this man.
I do, but I haven't always.
Ah, okay. Would you care to share into that? Or what safety means
Yeah,
to you?
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, safety is very subjective, for one.
Hmm.
And then I will also say that safety is something that I feel that we have a lot of power to cultivate within ourselves. And whether or not we feel safe in a relationship isn't, we put a lot of that on the other person, but it's my belief that a lot of the safety that we have the capacity to have is created by ourselves. And it's deeply related to self-trust as well, like trusting that no matter what happens in this relationship with this other person, I know that I've got me and that I can handle consequences of my decisions, whether they are ecstatic and amazing or they are challenging and difficult. But yeah, with my husband, he is someone that from the very beginning took radical responsibility and ownership more than any man that I'd ever seen. And that created a lot of safety for me. Seeing that.
When you say responsibility, what is that in reference to?
How his actions impact me and others. And while it might not always be the first place that he goes to take that responsibility, there always was that responsibility and that ownership and the repairing as well. Whereas I didn't have that so much in past relationships. And with my husband in particular, we got together in a really interesting time. His father had passed away that year. And we actually met like a month, not even a month after his dad had passed. And we didn't start dating for many months after that. But I'm like figuring out how to tell this story because it kind of goes all over the place. But it like actually stimulated a manic episode for him. He didn't know at the time that he was bipolar, but he had a manic episode. People that were both related to were impacted by the decisions that he made. And it was actually seeing him take ownership, responsibility, repair, clean up that made me fall in love with him more, because I saw, oh, if this is how he handles when he makes a mistake, I'm here for it. And it also, like, I could have seen myself without seeing him in his breakdown. I could have seen myself putting him on a pedestal and then even not being as authentic or honest about my humanness. But because he was so honest with me about what was going on, and taking ownership and responsibility, I felt more inspired to be more honest and authentic with him about the mistakes that I've made in my past and the things that I'm not proud of and the things that I regret. And so it actually ended up bringing us close very quickly because we were able to just like lay it all out on the table. And that's one of the things that has built a lot of safety in our relationship, in my opinion, is that we've cultivated this environment where nothing is left unsaid. And we know how to ask for the space that we need to have that be possible. To be clear that the other person has the capacity to receive the truth that we're experiencing in the moment as well. And we make mistakes, and that's not always the case. And
you're a human being. You're both human beings. Wow.
Part alien, but mostly human. So yeah, so that was a big piece, was seeing how he repaired, and that was a constant in our relationship. Now, this summer, my husband was diagnosed formally with bipolar 2. And that's been really challenging, and noticing that the moments where I felt unsafe in the relationship were related to this diagnosis, most likely, and the pattern it was creating in our relationship. So what has happened since then is that I feel safer now than ever, because we have the tools and the understanding and the framework to work with this, like, different expression, this neurodivergence, if you will, because there's genius with it too. And it's like, I love him. Like, I love the mania that he has at times, always. But yeah, that's created a whole other level of safety, is having those tools as well.
The understanding that comes from it.
Yes.
Okay. So let me condense that if I can, and try and summarize what I feel I heard. The ability of him to own his actions and take responsibility for his mistakes, to be forthright and honest with you, created a sense of safety for you to be able to trust him and yourself to be able to show up honestly in this dynamic. Is that right?
Yeah, that's all correct. And I'll just add another layer that I think is more our work in relationships. Like it was my work in the relationship, and others might identify with this, but I could see past versions of myself that didn't feel safe with myself, didn't trust myself to make the right decisions in relationships because I've made bad decisions in relationships in the past, which I believe there's no bad decision, it's all learning. But I could see the parts of me that were afraid that I was replaying a pattern and choosing someone unsafe again, when in reality, it was my ability to create my own safety in the relationship when that safety felt wavering that empowered me to stay the course, to commit, to be in devotion, to turn over every stone until we got to this place where this man who's 40 years old, has struggled with addiction and relationships his whole life, is finally getting clarity as to why that is. And that's, I think, a piece for, I wouldn't even say feminine partners, but in this case, for me and the work that I do with women, it's around being in your priestess energy, being devotional, holding the line, turning over all the stones, creating that safety within yourself because of the work that you do yourself around your emotional alchemy, to be able to hold something like that and get to the other side.
So what I perceive that to be is your ability to maintain your own safety, irrespective of what's going on, allows you to create a safe space for him to explore the stuff that he needs to experience in order to create a safe space for you in return.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So the sovereignty of being able to hold your own emotional experience and not need it from him, but know that it is there because he's committed to figuring it out with you.
Yes.
And that's something that you didn't have before.
What piece specifically?
The sense of safety within yourself.
Yeah, that's been something that I have unpacked over the years as I've kind of decolonized my mind and my emotions to come into this space of taking radical ownership and seeing my emotions and my feelings as messengers, as signals, and creating an attunement within myself. And so that didn't happen overnight. Again, that happened over many, many years, and that sword was sharpened in this relationship so very much. But yeah, and
Your own sense of cultivation of your safety was sharpened in this relationship.
yes, I would say that my own sense of my emotional alchemy was sharpened and therefore created safety.
Okay, that's amazing. One, congratulations. And two, I'm curious, what was the shift? Because it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, in a previous dynamic or previous relationships, the dynamic wouldn't or didn't sharpen your sense of creating your own safety. It went the other direction.
It absolutely did in other relationships as well. But it was made like it added up, right? And so in the last
Okay,
relationship, it
right.
was as much, and then it added up over time. And for me, a big piece of that as well was unpacking the difference between my instinct and my intuition. So
Ooh, please unpack that for us.
yeah. So to me, instinct is there to help us survive, right? It's very, very important. And in my opinion, it's also instinct and intuition are, in my opinion, both distinctly feminine types of wisdom.
Yeah.
Um, but the instinct lives more in the lower chakras, almost in like the sacral and in the roots. And so it's based on, okay, how do I survive this experience based on what's happened in the past, whether it be for me or something in my genetic code around survival. So that's what instinct is based off of. It's really keeping you in the past in a way. And again, that's really important in many contexts that we need to survive when our lives are literally in danger. And it can be limiting in a way as well, because intuition is based more on the possibility. It's based on our relationship to our higher timeline, our higher self, divinity, etc. And it's more about expanding and growing outside of our comfort zone. But if our instinct is staying in our comfort zone, there can be conflicting messages going on in our mind, like stay here, it's safe in my instinctual patterns.
Yeah.
When in reality, like the thing that feels certain is not very often the thing that's going to empower us to thrive or to grow. And so for me, learning to unpack, when is this my instinct and when is this my intuition, and how can I honor the instinct and hear it and assuage it in a way, so that I can actually tune into the intuition. Because I knew that this man was going to be the father of my children the first time I met him. It was clear in my body. And so I could tune into that moment of like getting that download and knowing that's my intuition, but then at the same time be in the fear of, oh, I've felt this type of dynamic in my past relationship. And is it different? Is it not? I don't really know. It feels the same in this moment. And so there's also a lot of being patient and holding out a little bit and using your tools, breathing deeply, etc.
Sounds like those tools are serving you very well to be able to discern between instinct and intuition. And I imagine that plays out in the dynamic, in the partnership, and maybe even in conflict as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
To help create a safe space or maintain a safety within yourself.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about it, when we are triggered, which is very often happening in relational conflict, the first part of our brain that's reacting is our animal, reptilian, instinctual brain. And it takes a very evolved part of us to move that conflict into our emotional brain, and then even more to move it into our prefrontal cortex, our like critical thinking brain. And yeah, there's something to be said for how do you build the capacity in a triggered space with your partner? How do you build that capacity to be able to move beyond the fight or flight, the trauma response? And that's a part of work that I'm growing into more, and it's been very supportive in relationship as well.
How do you feel you're being met in that with your partner, or even just previous partners? Because in a lot of these conversations, I'm hearing the disparity between men and women, particularly around the managing of emotions and being able to hold that in a healthy way.
Yeah, my husband is doing a lot of his own work. It's really interesting. I just had him in one of my programs to guest teach. It's a group for women. And so I had him come in to talk about what is it like to be in a relationship to me, and what has he learned and what has been challenging, and all these things. And one of the things that he shared was that, how do I phrase? I was shocked when he said this, because I've done a lot of my own work to be more respectful in my communication to him and more honoring to him, and seen a lot of benefit from that. But he actually said that that didn't matter so much, and it was up to him to be like so grounded in his center to be able to receive my own feminine, chaotic, emotional download, and see the gold in it, even if it's challenging for him to hear or receive or understand, and to see all of my expression as a moment for him to rise even further into his kinghood, and in a way find his own center and his own ground and regulation in it.
Interesting. So if I've understood that correctly, you're I don't want to say the word volatility, but the chaotic expression.
Let's say the range.
Range. Let's go with range. Range is a great word. Thank you.
I'll own volatile. I'll own it, but range.
The range of your emotional expression has been received by him as an invitation to step into being able to hold that.
Yes.
Rather than as a challenge to to not be able to handle?
Yeah, and in a way, there are ways that he may invite me into a more evolved space as well. So there are moments where I might bring him something really unconsciously in a very immature way. And he might say something like, "You want to try that again from your queen?" Um, and now I do that too when he brings it to
Is
me.
is
And
that always well received, or is there sometimes that, I guess it's coming from a place of love, so
I would say 90% of the time, I'm like, "Oh, you're right. Yeah, great
she wants to
invitation.
try
All
that
right, let's
again.
try that again." There is 10% of the time where I feel very righteous in whatever I am bringing and I don't feel heard. And so I'm like stomping my foot and I'm like, I have to make a scene or you're not going to hear me. And so maybe 50% of those times that's accurate. And then 50% of the time I'm stuck in my immaturity and I can't get out, for whatever reason.
What do you feel? Because, like, yes, that happens in relationship. I can attest to that myself, and not just from personal anecdote, but from all the conversations I'm having. It feels like in those moments, there's a part of us that doesn't feel safe,
Hmm.
and it's needing to understand what that is and what it needs, so that it can feel safe to, you know, not be so reactive.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that he creates a safe space for you to at least express it and know that that's okay, and then go on the journey to find it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's accurate. And I'll say that one thing that has been supportive for both of us over and over again, time and time again, is just taking space, taking
Mm.
time to separate from each other, to regulate ourselves, to come into a space where, yeah, again, just creating the safety within ourselves so that we can actually make lasting change in the relationship and not be, you know, putting our flags in the sand on the opposite sides. And like it's also I love this quote that says, "Would you rather be right or would you rather be in love?"
Right.
And
Yeah.
and that spaciousness sometimes creates the space to see, oh, there are actually two perspectives on this. And how
Mm.
can I feel honored and seen and validated in my perspective, and also honor, see, and validate their perspective, and then find the space to come back to love.
Ah, okay. So there's an element of respect in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it sounds like, from maybe what you're saying and also from my experience, that a lot of people would rather be right than return to a space of love.
I used to be that person. I still am that person in moments. I love being right. It feels so good. And love feels better.
Love feels better. That's kind of the take. So then why do you feel, I mean, obviously you can only speak to your own experience. What shifted so that you now choose love rather than before? And it seems like so many people do. They're so stuck in choosing right that they
Yeah.
torpedo their relationships.
Yeah. I think what made a shift for me is realizing that there are two ways to get to the same place. And it's non-negotiable for me to get to love. That's like non-negotiable. And that's how we've kind of built our relationship, is that, as I think that there are empowered ways to use what I'm about to say, and there are also toxic ways to use what I'm about to say. But for us, for the majority of our relationship, we've decided out is not an option. The boats are burned. We're figuring this out. So, um, with that as a foundation, we've kind of taken out like love is the, like, no matter what, coming back to love is the end game. But there are two ways to get there, and one is to fight the whole way and then be exhausted and for it to take forever. And then the other is to realize, like, oh, if I can just lean into love sooner, I'm probably going to feel so much more resourced on the other side and even validated. But can I have the courage to be the one to lead that, or to, when the repair attempt is there, can I accept it? Um,
Ooh, okay. I like this. I like the words that you use, because in some of the conversations I'm having, there seems to be a resentment perhaps of women being invited to be in that feminine leadership role. It's like, no, the man should be the one leading me back.
Oh, okay. So what do I think about this? Okay, so here's the deal for me. This is my truth.
Run.
Take it or leave it. I love my husband to lead in many, many aspects of our relationship. But I do believe that women also have responsibilities to lead in relationship, and they are different. And my choice, the story that I like to make up is that women are the oracle. She's intuitive.
Mhm.
She is the visionary. And her role is to make sure that the relationship is on course with the highest possibility. And so it is her responsibility, therefore, to inspire the man to take the action, the leadership and the action to get there. But it is her responsibility to communicate the deeper desire that she sees as possible in the depths of her soul in the relationship. And some men take this as criticism, some men take it as they're not enough, they're not doing enough, but it's my belief that this is really important and is a great mirror. And there's been moments in my relationship where I've given the harsh feedback and it was not appreciated in the moment, but in the long run, he was like, you're kind of fucking right, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna step up, and so it's not, it does mean saying the uncomfortable thing at times.
Mm.
And I also find that women are the leaders in love. They have a beautiful capacity to lean in. To me, it's like the divine feminine, and I believe that we all have feminine and masculine within us. And
Very tantric.
exactly, yeah. And our journey is about finding that balance. However, I also believe, my truth, my story is that I chose a feminine body for a reason, and that was to explore more of that whole and the superpowers of that. And my husband chose a masculine role for that reason. And I would say like 70% of the time he's in a more traditionally masculine role, and 30% of the time he's in a feminine, and vice versa. But it's my belief that the feminine superpower overall is unconditional love and acceptance. That's her like core superpower, unconditional love and acceptance. And the core superpower of the masculine is to grow and to evolve and to make change and to take action. And so it's my belief that women are much easier at leading in love because they're able to make that unconditional love and acceptance of their partner, of the situation, and then he's able to come in and be like, yes, we unconditionally love and accept this, but how do we evolve and get closer to the
Right. Okay. Yeah. How can we move forwards? Like the acceptance and then the
yeah,
inevitability of change. Which direction do we want to move into?
yeah, and you need that unconditional love first. It's like
Yes.
the idea of like, if you don't unconditionally accept and love where you're at, then you get into this fixing, desperate energy, and it makes everything so much harder. And
Mm.
so that's my feeling on that.
Mm. Yes, I would agree. It's as a follower and enjoyer of Tantra as well.
Yeah.
That's in alignment. And so where my mind goes then is as women have more of a proclivity to be in the feminine gift of emotionality more, uh, do you see it then as maybe the woman's I don't maybe not responsibility but invitation to as the one in the dynamic more capable and adept in emotionality to lead the person who is perhaps less um, capable, at least for the moment, into a space where they can develop and nurture that. Because a lot of the conversation I'm having is women saying, I want a man who can hold me emotionally. And at the same time, there's a recognition, well, women, you're just better at this. um, and so you're gonna be better at it. And that's not to say that the man or men don't have the capacity for it, but we've grown up in a society where it's not been as encouraged. So they're still in a period of learning,
Hmm.
and to give them the space to kind of figure that out. as the female or as the woman who is more adept in it, and that is your superpower and that is your gift, to create a space for them to be able to do that.
Yeah, I have several thoughts on this and I'm kind of just feeling out where to go. But one thing that I see a lot is that, and I used to be one of these women that was like, I want a man that's really emotionally attuned. And I have that. I have to be
Mm.
like, I'm really grateful I do have that. And I think it's totally possible to have that. And it's also recognizing that like we need men that are very manly and masculine and in their warrior energy. Like the world needs that right now. And so also celebrating and honoring those sides of the men. And I think that there's also this pitfall for women around feeling like we've done the work, we know it all better than them. Like, yeah, just this energy of I know best because I've done the emotional work. And I see this all the time. And yes, that's true. You've done a lot of work very often, sister. I see you, you've got it. But it can have the, and I did this, like I did this in my relationship to my husband. It can then come into this space of, well, I know better because I know better in this. And then it's like I know better in everything. And
Right.
missing all of the magic that your partner has that you don't have. Like you go into really, you don't want someone that's like has done all of the work that you've done, because then it's like where's the growth in that?
Yes.
So my husband has a whole other set of tools and understanding, and the more that I allowed myself to be influenced by his way of doing things, the more he allowed himself to be influenced by my way of doing things, and we're both growing because of
Mm.
that.
Mm. That's nice. Okay, so letting go of an expectation for the man to be anything other than what he is. Um, and something that came up for me the other day was this the differentiation between wanting a man to be able to hold you emotionally and needing him to be able to
Yeah.
hold you. And I think this speaks into what you mentioned earlier of being able to hold your own emotionality and create your own safety and it not be dependent on your partner, but a privilege of him when you need it or when you desire for it to be held.
Yeah. I also feel that the idea of like holding someone's emotion, what does that even mean? And so I think that women also get clear on what does that actually mean? Is it having them hold you in your emotions, like physically being able to like have your emotional expression and not have them fix it? Or is it like I actually do want them to make everything better? Or like what does that really mean for you? What is most important? Um,
Mm.
and yeah, just getting clear on that. But I think that there's also something to be said for, babe, can you hold your own emotions?
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, like a week or so ago, I got back from a retreat that I was facilitating, and it was very emotional for me, this retreat. And
Mm.
on top of it, I was about to start my period, so I was like extra sensitive.
Extra.
So I come home and I like actually said to my husband, I was like, look, this is where I'm at. I'm super fine to go into the bedroom and hold myself and like to do my things. And like, I actually have no capacity. Like, I know that you want to catch up. We haven't seen each other all weekend. I can't do it. I can't
Mm.
do any of like processing your stuff right now.
Mm.
Um, Tomorrow for sure. But what I need right now is for you to either be with me and hold me in this and have it be totally focused on me, or I need you to go do your own thing and I'm going to do it for myself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that that's a piece too, as a woman, being attuned to yourself and being clear on what do I need right now, and what
Oh,
does that look like?
may I ask a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
Thank you. I know that you gave him the option. I don't know which one he chose, but but
Happy
if
to
you
share.
yeah, so in that option, is it okay for him to choose himself? Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of the time it's my preference. Not always, but in that moment,
Sure.
I was actually like, I'm totally fine. And we kind of ended up doing like a combination. Like he held me
Nice.
for a while. I had like a good cry. He ran a bath for me. Then he left me alone in the bath. Um, and that was great. But honestly, I was super good to just like be by myself. And it was especially
Mm.
because I had just come off of this week of being with other people. But there was a moment where he started to like talk about other things, and I was like, whoa, 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 don't have capacity. Like,
Okay.
and then the next day I ended up spending with him and doing more of the things that he wanted to do. But it's the same with like pleasure too for me. So I find that a lot of people say like, oh, like masturbating. Can I talk about this with this? Is this fine?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So like masturbating and self-pleasure, I don't really like to do it. It's just so much better with another person. And like I agree that there are things that you can reach with a partner that you can't reach
Sure.
yourself, but there are also things that you can reach within yourself that you can't reach with a partner. And
Yeah.
so I'm very comfortable with that aspect. Like I love self-pleasuring just as much as I love having sex with my husband. And he's an
Mm.
amazing lover. He is insane. He's the best lover I've ever had, the best sex I've ever had. And I wouldn't choose sex with him 10 out of 10 times. I would choose it maybe like 7 out of 10 times.
Right. Yeah.
So, and it's the same for me with my emotional expression. Yeah, it's amazing. I love having him hold me, but I don't want to have the expectation that I need it all the time. And also understanding too that I have other people to support me in this
Right. Yeah.
too. I think it's really unhealthy in our culture that we put so like such high expectations on one person to meet all of our needs for intimacy, sexual intimacy, emotional intimacy,
Yeah.
intellectual intimacy, spiritual intimacy. It's not healthy. We need to have other outlets for that, in my opinion, because
Mhm.
again, there's days where I don't have the capacity to hold my husband fully, and there are days where he doesn't have capacity to hold me. And seasons of life even as well. So I
Yeah.
have a therapist, I have a coach, I have a circle of sisters and friends, I have a male best friend, I've got my support system.
That's great. I love that. You've got the whole spectrum of support so that you can get the best out of each aspect, which
Yeah.
I think, yeah, really great. And one of the things that came up when you were speaking there is I think I recognize in some women, at least, ones I've spoken to, that there is that desire for them to find the partner that will hold them fully all the time in their emotion because they don't want to hold it themselves. It's that I've been self-pleasuring for years now, and I want a man to do that for me. In doing so, losing sight of the fact that you can also enjoy the self-pleasure aspect or the self-care aspect
Yeah.
yourself. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It gets to be both.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how I hold myself. I love how I pleasure myself. I know exactly what I need in any moment. And it feels
Sure.
really nice to give that to myself. And there are times it's really nice to just lean on someone else and surrender and completely trust
Yes.
the holding as well. And I don't want to discount that. And it's something that
Mm.
I feel really grateful that I have the choice.
I think that's it. I think it comes down to the choice. And because what I've heard a lot on repeat is women saying, I just want a man that I can surrender fully into my femininity. And I understand that. I get that. It's to be in that receivership.
Hmm.
Um, and at the same time, in doing that, that's not an absolution of sovereignty.
Hmm.
You're not surrendering so that you don't have to hold yourself anymore. It's a choice.
Yeah, I'd love to speak into this a bit. I would even call it a sacred surrender of sorts because
Hmm.
I feel that there's such a power in letting someone else hold your power. There's such a power in letting someone else hold your power because it allows you the opportunity to actually go deeper within yourself and explore your subconscious and yourself in a way. And
Mm.
so having someone else
Mm.
make the decisions, call the shots, hold your emotional range can mean at times that you're not having to hold it together. You can just completely fall apart inside of yourself and then learn things about yourself as well. So there's a lot of opportunity in it too. But I think that there's shadow in the wanting someone to hold it all, to fix it all, or to resolve your
Right.
responsibility or whatever it is. but there's actually a
Mm.
lot of responsibility in using that surrender intentionally.
Yeah, I think that's the challenge, right? They look the same, but they're very different.
It's all about the intention.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the choice, the sovereignty, and really, what I'm hearing a lot from you is trust, self-trust in being able to not just hold it yourself because you know that you can, but also trusting yourself to surrender it, as
Mhm.
well as trusting the other person to be able to hold it and take responsibility for it when you choose to surrender it,
Yeah.
and take responsibility for themselves. There's, the conversation, some of the conversations I'm having, this desire to see a man be able to take responsibility for his own emotionality, as well as being able to take on the emotionality and holding of the partner. And that's a
Yeah.
lot of trust.
It's a lot of trust. And I also feel that there's, again, just so much space for grace going both directions, because we are learning this now. Like, we're
Yes,
learning it
yes.
in relationship and we're making mistakes, and that's a part of it. And I know that I've fallen into the trap of feeling like, oh, if my partner makes a mistake and doesn't hold me as immaculately or as attuned or precisely as I'm desiring, then, oh, it's not the right man for me. It's not the right person for me. And I feel that that's a trap. It's such a trap, and it's throwing away a really amazing personal opportunity because they're learning, just as you are learning. So
Mm.
that's a piece of
I,
it.
I like that. Actually, that touches on something that has been in my mind the last few days. Is I hear a lot of women saying that I can't find a good man, and my counter to that would be is that good men are out there. It's, can you find a man that you like and bring out the goodness in him?
I love that.
And I feel that kind of touches on what you were saying. And just because there are moments of challenge or there is room for growth, that doesn't detract away from the goodness that is there. Doesn't mean you have to throw it away.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not necessarily that it's our responsibility to teach our partners.
Right.
Um, but I was speaking to one of my friends. She's, in her mid-30s, deeply wanting a king. And she started dating this really awesome new dude and sweet. And I've seen her go through relationship after relationship where when it's hard, when there's conflict, when he messes up, she leaves.
Mm,
Great men. Um, and like they're not going to get it right all the time. And again,
right.
we're also learning. And one particular piece that she brought to me and wanted support on was that he had kind of like made some comments about her menstruating and it not being ideal or something because he wanted us or whatever.
Mm,
And my response to her was like, look, like, do you remember a time when you were disgusted by your menstrual blood, when you were like hiding tampons up your sleeve? Like, he hasn't had the opportunity to unlearn that yet, you know,
mm,
and it's your responsibility in a way to be so grounded in your truth that this is your sacred time of the month and this is your sacred fluid, and to like be in, like, I had suggested maybe you like self pleasure or like, and he hears it, or you share with him that you self pleasured on your moon and what that meant to you. And I mean, when I first got with my husband, he was quite similar, and now he eats me out when I'm on my period, and like puts it on his face. So like, there's lots of like, I'm glad that I didn't let that thing be the hard line,
right.
like instead get curious about, okay, if this is not working, like how could I use my inner priestess magnetic abilities to
Mm,
potentially inspire a different perspective or result.
right. To me, that speaks into that feminine leadership.
Yeah.
It's the the difference between uh, a gap being not a deficit but an invitation.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that the leadership isn't like, oh, you need to go do something. It's more
Right.
about being authentic to yourself. So in that
Yeah.
example, not like, oh, you now need to fix his feelings around this or whatever. It's like, no, just like be you on your period. Be you,
Yes.
be radiant, be pleasurable, be like magnetic, be oracular, be intuitive, lean into the superpowers and let him see that.
Okay. So like a radical self-honesty
Hmm.
and acceptance of that,
Yeah.
and and knowing it's safe to be yourself.
Yeah.
Mm, okay. So because we're coming towards the end, I'm curious then, it sounds like your friend that you just spoke of there, there's this perhaps unfair and unrealistic expectation to be met exactly where they're at,
Yes.
and that being the shift that perhaps would be beneficial to change in not just women but people in general, to not expect someone to have walked the path that you are on, and because they're not, that doesn't mean that they're not necessarily willing to bridge that gap.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Sorry, go
yeah, go
ahead.
on, please. No, go on.
Yeah, I just think that there's a lot of power in like setting aside your preferences. Yes, have your non-negotiables, absolutely, but instead of focusing and trying to find, like, notice the part of you that is trying to find the thing that isn't working, because that's the pattern is like and that's a good,
Mm,
that can be a really supportive pattern to call out the BS that's not actually right for your long-term relationship partner. But there's lots of spaces where you have a preference and it's not really keeping you from this person being a potential suitable long-term partner. And so if instead of focusing so much on the preferences that aren't perfectly in alignment, focus on the preferences as well as the non-negotiables that are being fully fulfilled, and really be in that space of gratitude and celebration. And when you're in that space of gratitude and celebration of what is working, it actually is so much more motivating and influential for those preferences that aren't in alignment for them, the other person, to actually begin to take your influence more. My relationship changed with men in general, not just my husband. My relationship with men overall changed drastically when I started to be radically grateful, just like excessively grateful. Grateful for the things that it's like, oh, well, he should do that. That's his responsibility. Or, of
right.
course, like, like taking out the trash. Like, yeah, that's my husband's responsibility, but I make a point every time to say, thank you so much. It feels so nice to not have to think about that and to be supported in this way. Opening a door. So many of us were taught growing up, like, a man should open the door. So it should happen. And so it can be easy to say, well, God, finally a man that opens the door like he should, and miss the moment to be really excessively grateful.
Yeah, that's such a good point. They're just because they do it doesn't mean that they also don't want to be acknowledged in that and appreciated for that. And I imagine that is for you in return in whatever
Yeah.
it is that you should be doing and that you are doing to satisfy.
Yeah, and gratitude to me is in a way an expression of pleasure, and pleasure is so
Ooh.
medicinal. It's so powerful. And when we see someone in their pleasure, it's like, "Ooh, I want to give them more," right? So again, if you can be grateful and express that pleasure, then you're more likely to get more of what you want, whether it's the exact same thing again or it's something that, like, you, like, again, one of those preferences that weren't in alignment, but they're now willing to shift because they see what happens when when they're given the gift of being pleasured. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm speaking a
No,
little
you're
bit
good.
in a circle, but does that make sense?
Huh. Okay. Ah, okay. So I have where I want to ask is this idea of what do you feel supports in creating safety then? I know that you spoke about being able to to recognize your partner's ability to take responsibility for his actions. Is there anything else that helps you create safety or helps you feel safe?
Yeah, obviously the piece on, creating the safety within yourself, trusting yourself, and overall, I think what both of those pieces have in common is this energetic of
Slowing down.
slowing down, pausing, getting curious,
Mm.
because things can escalate into a space that feels unsafe very, very quickly. If you can catch it before it even goes to that space, it just creates a much more fertile environment overall in the relationship, in my opinion.
So a non-reactivity.
Yeah, or a catching the, ooh, I notice, and this takes a high level of attunement with ourselves, but noticing when that activation starts to happen, when the trigger is beginning to trigger, and
Mm.
taking ownership, taking responsibility of that for ourselves, and then asking, what do you need in that moment? And depending on how unsafe or explosive things can get in your relationship, it might be something as simple as coming back together and touching or hugging or looking at each other in the eye, or it could look like, hey, let's take 30 minutes and come back to this.
Okay. So knowing the tools for you individually and as a duo as to what can bring you back into safety.
Yeah.
That's nice. Okay. Yeah, I like that. Um, and that is, did that develop organically?
Did that develop organically? Um, and I think that it's been a series of like learning it over the years in various relationships. Um, but it's been the most impactful in my marriage. Um, because in that way, when we're like, I notice in past relationships very often I would fawn. And so when there was a trigger, I would just,
Mm.
instead of like taking the space to get clear on what I need, I was just focused on what they needed and
Right.
like cleaning it up and like making it better because I couldn't sit with the discomfort of their pain or my pain. And
Ah,
and so for me, it's been creating the space to slow down, take the space, get clear on what I need, bring it back in a regulated place, get
hmm.
everything out, ever like say all the unsaid things
Yeah.
so that it's not like this one piece keeps lingering in the back of the relationship and then adding up and adding up
Mm.
until it's all a soup of mess.
Yes.
Like all of these different messes and you can't even untangle and then it's like you have an argument and instead of arguing about the thing that's happening in the moment you're bringing up something that happened 2 years ago.
Mm.
So
You
so
said
to me
you
it's
said
like
something really interesting, I think, about being comfortable with the discomfort.
mhm.
And it sounds like you've developed the capacity to hold discomfort and be okay with it.
Yeah, I would say that that's accurate-ish. I'm okay-ish with the discomfort. I've increased my capacity to be with the emotions and experiences that many of us would label as negative,
Right.
because I've learned to see them as opportunities, as
Yes.
teachers. But that doesn't mean that when I'm in it, I like it. It doesn't mean that
Um,
when I'm in it, it's easy. But I know now to trust the process and to know, okay, what is the quickest way out of this that is actually going to last is to
mm,
not go into my trauma response and instead
right.
to breathe into the capacity and figure out what I need to ground to then come to a
Yeah.
resolution.
Thank you. Do you know what your husband needs to feel safe?
What does my husband need to feel safe? That's such a good question. I'm going to ask him after this, actually. I feel that my husband needs respect.
Hmm.
Um, we're both quite controlling type A people, so we both feel we both fall into the trap of feeling that we need control to be safe.
Hmm.
And therefore, if we need control to be safe, then we need to have the other person be controllable.
Yeah.
And fortunately, neither of us are particularly controllable beings. So, so it's been a journey of, okay, like how can we build trust with each other to learn when to take the other's
Hmm.
leadership as well?
Oh, how did you do that?
How did we do that? I think it's just been like over time seeing the impact of what happens when we take the other's leadership, because
Right.
99% of the time when we take the other's leadership, it actually ends up working out better.
Hmm.
We take, turns with that. We used to have in the beginning of our relationship, we had this thing called the D badge, and D stands for devotion, the devotion badge.
Ah.
So it would be this thing of like, we're both fighting over what we're going to do or this or that or whatever. And there would be a moment where if one of us would be like, you know what, I'm going to take the D badge on this one, but like, and that was really supportive because it made it in a way like, yeah, we're going to do it your way, but also like I get points because I leaned in here and it was not easy for me. And I want that to be seen and I want it to be honored and respected. And so that was
Ah.
really supportive for us.
Okay. So in claiming the D badge, you're surrendering your control, but consciously handing it over and being recognized in that. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
I
It
even made like a little badge. I don't know where it is now. It was but like symbolic. I made it for like his birthday or something. I don't remember. Christmas. I don't know.
okay. I like that. Really effective. There's the conscious handing over and the conscious recognition and counterpart of receiving that person's control. I like that. Very, very cool. Thank you. I'm conscious of time and I don't want to over monopolize you. So before we part ways, I was curious if you had a takeaway word or sentence from our time together.
That's so good. I loved this conversation. I honestly would
Thank
be
you.
interested to listen to it again because I felt like you asked really good questions that made me think of
Thank you.
things in a different way. But if I were to pick a word, I think curiosity.
Oh,
Curiosity
great
would,
word.
yeah.
Great word. And any takeaway sentence or reflection that you feel like you want to consolidate our time into?
Well, I'm definitely going to ask my husband what makes him feel safe. I have a feeling he's going to say something along the lines of, well, it's not your responsibility to make me feel safe, which is great. Like, again, I love the self responsibility. But
Okay, can I reframe it then?
yes, let's go.
Rather than what makes you feel safe, what can I do to help you feel safe?
Yeah, or what can I do to support
Yeah, I love
your
that.
journey to safety?
Yeah.
Like that. We'll see.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for this time. I've really enjoyed chatting with you and hearing more of you and from you and
Me
about you.
too. It was great.
Um, these conversations have been so great, so insightful, and so helpful in helping my evolution in understanding the feminine and trust and safety in the dynamic. So I'm grateful for your experience and your shares. And if there is anyone you know who you feel would be open to having a conversation like this, please do invite them. I would really appreciate more voices.
Yeah, my friend Sophia might be a good call. She's been really supportive and like she's been married a bit longer than me, and I've felt very often in the relationship that she's like one step ahead.
Mm.
And like her and her partner almost got divorced, and she's got a really interesting story and a really beautiful perspective on safety and relationships. She does marriage coaching as well.
Okay, cool. Nice. Do you think she'd be open to a conversation?
Yeah, I think she absolutely would.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, Leola. have. I don't know what else you have in store today, but I hope that you have a beautiful day. And I hope that we get to speak again. I really enjoyed this.
Cheers. Thank you